Okay, welcome back. I hope you had the opportunity in order to refresh your brain for what we're doing. So this part of uh, this day's schedule is to go through the adapt infrastructure in a bit more detail. So I'm going to give just a little 10 or so slide introduction to the PowerPoint, and then we're going to dump it and go straight to the hands-on approach for the remainder of this afternoon, at least afternoon on my coast. Again, if you don't have an Adapt account, please email us at, oh, isn't I'm not sure in the slideshow. Sorry. Okay. Please send me an email at entire info@libretext.org in order to get you an account as soon as possible. So let's get this thing going here. Again, the short overview and some of these slides you saw already in the introduction I gave here, but I'm going to give a little bit better context because I have a bit more time off of here. So like I mentioned before, Adapt is designed as a hybrid technology. It has multiple technologies underlying it. It's not important for anyone to master all the different technologies that you have access to in Adapt. You just have to master or at least be proficient at the technologies in order to suit your specific goals. Again, those four technologies are WebWork. WebWork is a technology that comes from upstate New York, the University of Rochester. Mike Gage and others up there were the ones that pushed this back in the middle 90s, back when everything that had the word web in it was very exciting. WebWork was a mixture of web and homework, bringing it together. It is one of the first open source homework platforms that were available out there. It's gotten very popular amongst upper divisional R1 campuses, and its popularity is also a little bit more on the East Coast than it is on the West Coast for a variety of different reasons. iMath AS is a technology that David Lippman out of Pierce College in Tacoma, Washington built about 15 years ago. It has comparable capabilities of WebWork. It's a beautiful infrastructure, and that technology underlies MyOpenMath, which he also runs. If you're in Washington State, it underlies WAMAP. It underlies Lumen Learning's OHM system. It underlies XYZ homework system. Both of those are for-profit commercial entities using open source technology in order to facilitate making money from students, which again is the opposite of how we operate. But nonetheless, if you have any question that's a WebWork question, if you're familiar with that technology, or a question that's an iMath AS or in MyOpenMath, we can bring it in and host it because we have that technology underlying Adapt. Each one of those technology comes with about 50,000 questions within their catalog. So that gave us a significant leg up in terms of expanding the current corpus of questions that we have there. They're both beautiful technologies. The problem, not necessarily a problem, but one of the issues associated with using those technologies is the power. So each question is a little mini code, and you have to write that code in order to be able to build the question to do what you want. So while you can do a lot of stuff with it, in fact, your limitations are really quite small. You have to go through the barrier of understanding coding. And if you're uncomfortable coding, whether it's in PHP, for example, in iMath AS, or it's Perl in WebWork, this is not the technologies that you would be using to build your question. However, that doesn't mean you can't use the existing questions that were created in those technologies. Rounding that out is H5P. I mentioned before that H5P is a technology that was designed to be compartmentalized, designed to be interchangeable from one platform to another platform, which it does very well. And it and it's really well designed for graphical interface, and it's easy to use, which is the reason why it's been growing steadily over the last 10 years, actually now 11 years since it's introduced, and it's quite popular out there in the open community. Their limitations, and Christina mentioned about this before, is that it has issues associated with accessibility, that many of the question types in H5P are not accessible by American standards. The second one is it has serious issues with security. And I'll talk about that a little bit a little bit later on, but I can mention it here. And essentially, any student can hack into an H5P problem. So if you have an H5P problem, and if you turn off your internet, you can then solve the problem, get the answer, and then turn on the internet and then submit the answer. There's also hacks through the browser that you can use in order to be able to check it. If you press F12, you can look at the source and see the answer right there. So in short, H5P is not a good technology for secure summative use. It is a great technology for formative use, that is not requiring signing in, that you can decorate your textbooks in order to make it more engaging. And that's the real utility. So if anyone tells you H5P is a substitute for homework, they're either lying or incompetent, and they most likely are both. So don't believe them, at least not the current incarnation of H5P. Native, I said, is a catch-all for a range of different technologies that we've folded into Adapt. One is QTI, which is the protocol used in learning management systems. A year and a half ago, via partnership with the technical colleges in Wisconsin, we expanded Native to include the next generation nursing infrastructure, which has a series of question types that are very unique. And for those of you that may be in nursing, you may be exposed to these sort of issues, and I can show them for you if you like, although I'm not a master of those questions. We've also expanded it, and we will have it expanded later on today to include more interactive capabilities. One is the ability in order to upload or to construct organic chemistry molecules and then evaluate if those molecules are correct or not. And that's part of an expansion effort in order to make more powerful organic chemistry capabilities in Adapt. And I'll show you a short video of that later on off of here. The upshot off of here is that there's multiple technologies that you can use to create problems. However, in using those problems, it doesn't matter what technology they happen to be used. So as the corpus gets bigger, it becomes easier, more powerful for you to be able to create questions or create assignments in order to address your need. As teams like Christina's team come in and make more questions in Spanish, it makes it easier for other instructors to be able to capitalize on. And that's part of what OER is. That's part of the sharing is caring model of OER. And the upshot that I'm trying to say with this little bit of a diatribe here is that there's a lot of complexity in Adapt. You don't have to master everything. If you don't understand something or you don't want to understand something, that's perfectly fine. There are alternatives in order to be able to get you to where you need to go. In terms of auto-graded capabilities, or so open-ended graded capabilities, where you have a student or a TA or a grader that does the grading, or the instructor, you can use that in order to facilitate student submissions of rich text, audio files, audio or files like PDFs, Excel, or other things like that. And we have a nice mechanism called the Open Grader that I'll be showing later on in order to be able to facilitate that. We're going to be expanding that into more capabilities in the near future. One of them is the ability in order to draw on a page and using other technologies that I'll be showing there. So a little bit about what Adapt is and why Adapt is formulated in the way it is. So if you look at a single technology like WebWork, and WebWork has its own interface in order to tap into it. It has a problem builder, it has a problem library, it has a problem searcher, it has a assessment delivery module, it has a gradebook module, it has an LMS interface modules. And these are all constructed individually in order to be able to handle a certain goal. If you look at iMathAS or MyOpenMath, it has the same set of modules written in a different language in order to be able to do specific goals out there. H5P, if it were in individual language, it has been modified a little bit. It has most of the same capabilities, and QTI as part of learning management systems have the same capabilities that's out there. The upshot of it here is in order to master all these technologies, you need to master a lot of modules out here. What we are doing is we're trying to combine the libraries from each of the components, combine the search capabilities for each of the components, centralize the gradebook, and centralize the LMS interface so that each of these technologies is largely centered around a problem that you build and a problem to and evaluate that problem. And that's it. And the interface is the same. So if you use as a student adapt for Spanish and you use it you can use the same adapt interface for chemistry or for economics or for other fields. So there isn't this cognitive load in terms of relearning or at least learning a new platform and a new interface that's connected to it that's off of here. Carrie asked a question, where do you find this slide deck? I had a problem uploading it because it's really big with the end of the videos. I'm going to move those videos and then upload it again after this presentation. I just have a maximal. Right now it's 200 megabytes because of the videos. So this is the underlying goal of what we do. So when we add new technologies, we still have the same interface. So that once an instructor masters it, they don't need to learn anything else. Or once a student masters it, they don't need to learn anything else in order to make it work. So I mentioned before that adapt can be used directly. This is how I tend to use this, where I just give students the adapt website. They sign in with their account, they get their course, they solve their problems when they're supposed to solve their problems, and everyone's happy off of that. And some faculty choose to embed into their textbook adapt questions so that the textbook itself becomes the homework system. They can either embed that textbook then into their learning management system via adapt, or students can access it directly. But the key point is it builds a mechanism to have students engage with the material on the textbook. In this case here, homework that ties it together, because the students are more likely to do homework than they are in order to read the book. At least that's what our data is showing them in terms of activities of our resources. I mentioned the in-class personal response system, our phone app that will be available soon. The idea behind here is that in our textbooks, we recognize that 50% of the students interact with the textbooks via their phone. Phone is the native technology for students these days, and it's probably going to be the dominant technology sometime in the future. So the point is, let's take the step forward toward the students and give them the opportunity in order to do the questions using the native technology that they have instead of using our web interface, which works perfectly fine on the phone anyways. This provides us the opportunity in order to capitalize on what the phone provides, which you don't get with just the computer interface with the web application. And that is the ability in order to do in-class polling. So you can ask a question, have students interact with it, which I could do here, but we didn't release the phone app yet to you guys in order to be able to interface, although I will give you some examples. And you already saw the QR code that Christina mentioned, which gives you an interface to the web part of a web-based assignment. But this gives you the ability in order to supplant in-class polling technology. iClicker, for example, as the dominant one. And iClickers cost about $40 per student per class right now, which is as expensive as a commercial homework system. And this provides a mechanism in order to remove it. So when I teach my large 500 student classes, this is the only mechanism I have in order to interact with the class beyond the first few rows of the students that are actually interactive, but it provides a mechanism in order to get students engaged, even if they are introverts and don't want to be interactive in class. Lastly, we can interact with learning management systems. So Michelle, the slide deck folder is in the assets of the conductor page. Jennifer can post that on the chat here. So irrespective of how students interact with the homework that they have, we have our own grade book in order to operate outside of a learning management system. We have the ability in order to download the scores from that grade book and upload it to any learning management system. And right now in Canvas and in my brain is in Canvas, and there's a second LMS that just escapes me right now. We can actually embed via LTI the scores automatically. So it passes it back. There are several other LMSs that we are going to be expanding next month that are already, the code's already written into a different platform. We just need to plug it in and test it out in order to be able to operate. So if you have a different LMS than Canvas that you want to pass things back, Blackboard is the other one, I'm sorry, that we had put in there. If you have something other than Canvas or Blackboard, let us know if you want to be able to facilitate or help us in testing it out and making sure that it actually operates off of there. About 20 to 25% of the submissions to ADAPT are via the LMS. So 75% of submissions are to courses that are not coupled to an LMS. This is an example of embedding a question from ADAPT into a book. This is ADAPT. This is added formatively. This is a H5P question, which is just basically a true-false question. This is an intermediate nutrition book out of Kansas State University by Brian Lyncheld. And the key point is it facilitates greater engagement that's out there. So I didn't show this video in my last slide. I just showed a snapshot of it. This right here shows, at least as of a year and a half ago, the state of affairs for the phone app. And like I said, it's a native infrastructure that you use in order to solve problems. It also gives us the ability in order to tap into the phone camera, so that when students are uploading an image that may be important, for example, if they're taking a picture of their work and they want to submit their work for partial credit, they can just use the phone app directly to take a picture and it process it. In some cases, and this is something that's going to be introduced in a few months, we can take the snapshot, the picture that's uploaded, and convert that into text, convert that into equations using optical character recognition, or converting it in, if you're drawing a molecule, an organic molecule, converting it into an organic molecule that you can then upload and be able to process that. That makes it easier for students in order to be able to write on a piece of paper rather than using an interface that may be more difficult in order to be able to express what they're doing and then upload it automatically there. So I mentioned already that we can deliver questions via traditional, where we have courses. Courses have assignments. Assignments have questions. Those assignments are open and closed on a specific date or time, and students submit them. Or we have learning trees, where learning trees consists of a root question and then several other nodes. Those nodes can either be more assessment nodes or exposition, meant in order to educate the students on specific skills necessary to be successful in that question up there. And like I mentioned earlier on, there's plenty of evidence to argue that these learning trees provides a mechanism in order to be more powerful than just a single question by itself. The reason for that is multifaceted, but one aspect behind it is that it facilitates engagement. Students are engaged in the resources, they're engaged in the textbook, they're engaged in the question, and that engagement couples into learning. It provides a mechanism in order to facilitate metacognition, because the way that we have it set up is as a choose your own adventure story. Students earn a do-over in the learning trees by engaging in the tree via a series of criteria, and each branch in the tree deals with a specific skill. So they have the ability in order to evaluate which skill do they feel that they need to grow or develop in order to be more successful with the root question. And that's something that a black box adaptive learning engine, an algorithm, quote unquote, is unable to generate, because it spoon feeds students, making less robust students as they spit out. So, more about that later on. That's the reason why ADAPT is called ADAPT. So I just want to mention the technologies again. I said they're technologies of WebWork, iMathAS, and QTI, and I separate them from H5P in two important criteria. And there are other technologies, like I mentioned, organic spreadsheets will be coming out soon, Jupyter, clicker questions and such. Uh, Questions can be evaluated either as server side or client side. So if you're unfamiliar with that terminology, it's basically saying, is a question evaluated by my computer in the cloud or by the computer that's sitting on your desk? If it's in the cloud, it's protected, it's secure, it's unhackable, quote unquote. Nothing's unhackable, but it's pretty unhackable. If it happens to be client side, you can easily hack into it, like I mentioned before. Any H5P question, if you just view the source by just right-clicking on your mouse, you can look at the source and you can see the answer to that H5P problem, period. So it's not a secure assessment infrastructure. Web work, IMath AS and QTI, because we have control over it at multiple levels, we can address accessibility. Whether it's the question accessibility or it's the actual technology around the question. H5P, because of the way the structure is set up as a sort of a distributed mechanism from a single source that's from Norway, we have limited control in terms of assessing its accessibility. So while a lot of the questions are not accessible, we are unable to fix that accessibility, but we are able to introduce guides in order to give you information about how you can make these H5P questions accessible, or if it's even impossible to make them accessible, that you're moving forward. So these are things in order to pay attention to in regards to selecting the technology that you want to choose in order to be able to move forward. So to tie it together, we have a range of different technologies, including open-ended evaluation that you have access to. These things are all handled by the adapt overlay. The adapt questions can be embedded into your textbook if you decide you want to do that. They can be processed through your in-class, so your polling system, and you can also pass into your learning management system directly for activities that's there. Okay, I mentioned the studio. This is a snapshot of the studio. You can access it again at studio.libredex.org or do that launchpad I mentioned before. Your account that you use to register gives you full access to being able to make these H5P problems. Just be aware of the issues associated with H5P. On a personal level, I tend to avoid H5P unless it brings something to the table that I don't get via other technologies. This is what the application looks like on the top, which is we're going to be addressing momentarily. I just want to talk about a few other things that we have over here that's coming out in Adapt. I mentioned making organic molecules. This is a mechanism that we can use in order to create a molecule. We call it the sketcher, and then we can submit that molecule for evaluation if that's the molecule that we expect it for doing. So in other words, we can start to do organic chemistry questions that are more than just simple multiple choice questions, something more engaging for the students that are out there dealing with organic chemistry. We'll start to expand this to other fields that are akin to organic chemistry, like biochemistry with proteins and other stuff, but that's a little bit later on out here. And we have the ability in order to look at the graphical description of that molecule as we build or afterwards. Okay. I mentioned the utility of a phone app. This takes as a phone app that was developed by Todd Martinez at Stanford. It's called Mole AR. You can download these from your Play stores right now, and it shows you a snapshot of being able to take a picture of something. In this case here, a hand-drawn picture of this cycloalkene, and then generate the molecule right here, and it even generates what's called a smiles. If you're unfamiliar with smiles, it doesn't matter. The key point is that this one here can be spit back to the technology I showed before with making molecules, and you can tweak this thing up because it can be sometimes painful in order to build a molecule or a complex molecule online using that technology. So you can draw a piece of paper, take a screenshot, take a snapshot, and then you're ready to rock. And that reduces the time in order to upload these problems and facilitates a greater mechanism in order to to tweak and develop this technology in order to take screenshots and being able to facilitate them for a variety of things. This is based on machine learning, and this gives us the ability in order to not just take a look at molecules, but you can also do this theoretically in other things, like, for example, taking a picture of a coffee cup and recognizing that that is caffeine that is relevant off of there. That's more advanced things that we're not going to be dealing with right now. The last technology that's going to be coming on the scene within the next week or two, if everything is working out right, is our virtual dissection technology. This facilitates technologies or facilitates questions relying on spatial organization of structures, for example, in anatomy and architecture, some biochemistry problems, or anything where the spatial aspects are particularly important in order to be able to master. And you can start to ask questions like identifying objects. You can say, click on what the mandible is on the skull or some other aspects in order to be able to get this thing that you can't get in a conventional multiple choice or drag and drop like infrastructure. We're very excited about this because we've been dreaming about this for several years. So at this point here, I'll transition into the online or the real-time capabilities. I know there are a few questions in the chat, which I can address off of here. Again, I want everyone to sign in to Adapt. You can follow with what we're doing with that. And I will post this the slide deck onto the conductor. I'm going to have to delete these videos because the slide deck, again, is a fifth of a gigabyte, and it's a little bit bigger than what I would like to upload. So with that, let me answer a few questions here. How do you access web work? So Rinda, you access web work directly through Adapt, and iMathAS is a separate server that we run that eventually will be folded into Adapt directly. And I will give you the URL on it a little bit later on. Chris asked a question about Adapt being free or free-ish, and how can you say more? Okay, that's a really good question in order to address. And the one thing to mention before discussing that is the aspect that nothing is free. We'd like to believe that OER is free, but it's really not free. It takes, even if the person who created it is distributing it freely, it took that creator's time in order to be able to evaluate that. And that was there not free. Once you actually create something, distributing it is not free based on the infrastructure that you have that's out there. Even if you have a free platform for distributing, like what our platform is, it requires infrastructure in order to maintain, and that requires a bit of money in order to be able to process. Because we are not for profit, that money is significantly reduced, or we have partners that provide that technology freely for altruistic reasons. It still requires a little bit of investment. So the Adapt homework system requires multiple servers in order to operate. So I mentioned iMathAS, mentioned QTI, and such like that. So the deal that we made with the state was that they would invest in the construction, the state of California, that is. They'd invest in the construction of Adapt, and every faculty and student in the state gets Adapt for free. And that's all fine and dandy. And then if you're outside the state, then we ask those members, those faculty and states, and we actually want the campuses to chime in, to invest in terms of this stability. And it's basically $10 per year, $10 per student per term, as many classes as they want. And that's significantly cheaper than commercial alternatives, but it provides us, when it operates at scale, with this sustainability necessary in order to ensure that what we create is available for everyone to utilize. And such. So that's largely the price point that we have here. I see Roger, that Jennifer mentioned a few of those things already in the chat. If you have more questions regarding that, please let us know. I would love to be able to. I will mention also that Adapt as a question bank is freely available for any verified instructor. So if you're a verified instructor, you can tap into and use it in order to find questions and use it. It's just as a homework platform where students submit and we keep those grades and such that it happens to cost more. So Nadine asked, are there any plans to add computational chemistry, such as embedding students to do interactive quantitative conformational analysis? Yeah, actually, we have we've been working a bit in terms of integrating Jupyter Notebook System into Adapt this year, so you can actually upload code that's out there. We have the ability via our current capabilities in order to upload various things, various aspects. The conformational analysis, I need to know exactly what the export is for that. But in principle, yes, we either have the capabilities for it or we will be able to modify that puts it in place. So Chris, can we add them to the remix book for free? Add questions to the remix book, I think is what Chris is asking. And yes, you can do that for free. There is a caveat in terms of which questions you're allowed to upload, because you can't upload any arbitrary question. So for example, if Christina makes a question that she's created that she plans on using for her homework or for her exam, we don't provide you the opportunity in order to grab her question and embed it into your book such that anyone can access and free. Because essentially anything that goes into our book and becomes publicly available, Chegg or Course Hero or one of the other numerous parasitic websites will find it and they will index it, and you'll be able to process that. So we don't want you to be able to compromise other people's intellectual property or their courses by being able to distribute that freely. And that's why questions that are meant to be shareable in your book are called formative, or ones that you create yourself, you have the ability in order to do. And hopefully that makes sense as a limitations, as a limitation because of the community aspect of how Adapt operates. Narika asked, can we use Adapt for practice questions for free cost as long as we do not integrate in Canvas? If you make your questions formative, then the students can use it, whether it's formative embedded into a book or formative outside of that. So the QR code that Christina put together is a formative assessment. So anyone with that QR code can tap into it and do those problems immediately without having any issues associated with being able to tap into that. So that is freely available. Again, you have the same limitations that you can't grab anyone else's questions because again, you're compromising their use. So Nalintha asked, can you ask the organic chemistry app? That right there is a new technology based off of Moleview from Amsterdam. We call it the Sketcher, but it doesn't have a formal name that's out there. Okay. And Arinda, did you can you send an email to info or to Josh Halpern, who's on this call, and ask for an account, and he can create an account while I actually move forward with that. Okay, so there are a few other things on here that we'll be talking about. So let's get going because we have about 35 minutes in order to be able to do this thing. So I'm going to pull up. I'm going to go to Adapt. Or should I can just go to the Launchpad. Go to Launchpad, you'll see Adapt right here. I'm going to click on Adapt. Here's the Adapt interface. I am signed in. If I'm not signed in, I can sign in automatically right here under Login, and I sign in right here. So in the next 35 to 40 minutes, we're going to go over three primary things, and then after lunch we're going to go to a fourth one. And the one thing is to create a course. In the course we create assignments and then add some questions to the assignments. So it's a really quick and dirty way in order to do so. Again, we're going to do a refresher of that and another aspect right after lunch, and then you'll have an hour and a half in the breakout rooms in order to be able to flesh out these things and move forward. So Kisra said that the screen is cut off at the edges. Is that I'm not sure. Are other people having difficulties seeing the screen that I have on there?
Looks fine to me.
Looks
Okay.
fine to me
Well,
too.
this is being recorded. So if there are any issues, Kestra, is there a specific side that you're not able to see? Okay, so so here we go. This is me logged in. When you guys log in, you're not going to have any courses because you don't have any courses created, except for those of you that have already created courses before this conference handled. So you can imagine this is empty. In the upper right-hand corner, you have new course and you have import course. So again, I want to reiterate the structure that we have here. We have courses. Below courses, we have assignments, but in assignments, we have questions. So that 3 levels are the ones that we're going to be important for us. But there's really a 4th level way at the bottom, which is the library level. That's where all the questions are. And the questions themselves are all hosted there. They're unique questions, and you can grab from the questions as a question bank in order to populate any number of combinations of assignments and courses that you want to be able to do, because it's a community collection. Now, if you build questions and you don't want other people to see those questions, you can select them as private, and then no one is able to recognize that you have those questions. Now that goes against the sharing is caring model underlying OER, but there are reasons I understand why people may want to have their questions or assignment or even course fully private and not for anyone else to be able to see. Integrity is one of the bigger reasons that people have out there. So I just want to be able to mention it. Course has assignments, assignments have questions, and then you have a library down there that consists of 250,000 questions that you can tap into. Yeah. So before we actually start here, let's talk about a few things on the screen. So first, we have a Launchpad icon, a little rocket that you can use in order to be able to open up the Launchpad. We have our logo. If you click on our logo, it will go to this page directly. Anytime you get lost, if you click on the logo, you'll be able to go to it in order to be able to get to this thing. You have the support infrastructure. So if you have a question here, you can type a question and you can contact support, or you can do a search through Insight and such. You don't have control panel. Just ignore that. That's just because of my account. And then you have the dashboard. And the dashboard consists of 9 entries, 4 that are personalized: my courses, my questions, my learning trees, and my assignment templates. And the last 5 are more collective: searching through the question bank, browsing learning trees, browsing public courses that people have shared with other people in order to tap into, the commons, which are the courses that we curate versus the all public courses that are out there, we meaning the development team, and frameworks, which is our framework that we use in order to be able to align questions to specific frameworks. For example, if you're in California, the CID, the course ID number, comes with a specific set of descriptors that you can use in order to catalog your questions, and that's useful for those learning analytics that I mentioned before. So, anyways, if I want, I can change settings for myself, which includes my name and my time zone, or I can change the password that's connected to me. I'm going to click on the logo, go back to the top, and I have the ability to log out. So that's the most of this. I will mention this gray bar right here is a standard breadcrumbs, which basically tells you that as you go down these levels of course, assignment, question, you'll see this gets expanded in order to reflect that hierarchy that's out there. So what I want you guys to be able to do is to import an existing course. So if you click on import course, you'll come up with this very simple interface here, and you could type in something that's in your field. For example, if I type in Spanish, I'll have an obscene number of courses that have been making Spanish or been using Spanish for largely the last year and a half. That's thanks to Christina Moon and her team. And you can come in and select one of these that you want to be able to review. We don't have time in order to go through the review process right now, but you can download it. You can look at it. If you don't like it, you can throw it away. So right now, I want you to be able to import a course that you like. Now, we don't have courses in every different field yet, but we do have a lot of courses in a lot of fields, somewhere in the order of 450 to 500 courses. So if you typed in the name of the instructor. If you happen to know the instructor or the field or some key component, it will do a search through the title in order to be able to identify that. So if I did chemistry, I have a range of different chemistry topics that are right here. So while you guys are looking through the courses in order to import, I can address Mohammed's question. Mohammed?
Yes, under the dashboard, I only see 3 tags. I don't see import and other tags that are showing on your screen.
I think you're signed in with the developer account and not your campus, not your instructor account, since you're a developer.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
The developer has limited access than instructor.
Okay.
So please tell me if you have a problem signing in, but this should work. Okay. So again, the goal right now is for you to bring in some course. So even if we don't have something that's in your specific field, pick one that you think you might be interested in taking a look at. It doesn't matter which one it happens to be. So I will look at Christina's Terra Libra one course. I'm going to import it. So it takes a moment in order to bring it in with all the assignments and all the questions that are organized like that. I will mention this has nothing to do with students enrollment, student ID. You don't get any of that information that was come in here. Tamilia, you were able to log in. How do you get to My Course? If you click on the logo, that will go to your My Courses page. So it brought in just write down alpha course or no course if you're asking about beta course. I'll mention that momentarily. So it brought in a course here, and you'll notice that it has a red hue. The red hue means that it's using learning management system parlance, it's unpublished, which means even if students were enrolled in that course, they would not see that course exists. So it's a circuit breaker in order to turn it off. And that just makes it convenient for you to be able to. So you can see I have a whole lot of past classes here that are all turned off. The students that were enrolled in that class no longer have access to the material in that class and such. It gives a term and it has a handful of action items here. This is the general trend that we have when we tabulate courses or assignments or even questions. You have action items here. This is a grade book. This is the course properties. This is cloning, which we'll be talking about in more detail after lunch. And this right here is a trash can, which means throw away or delete. This right here is the circuit breaker in order to make it turn on. If you turn it on, it gives you a little bit of this pop-up. This is called a modal, which is a term I'll be using momentarily, or actually multiple times in the next couple of days. That gives you a little bit of information regarding this thing. And now this course would be live. When I go through the appropriate steps, students can enroll and see the content in this course. So let's see the content in this course. I'm going to click on the logo here, or this icon here, and I can see what Christina has done. So Christina has brought in, or has made a course that consists of approximately 25 or so assignments that are, I'm not going to try to pronounce because I would not do a very good job of that, that addresses different things. So they're all hidden. So students that enroll in this class don't see all of these. They wouldn't see any of them. Now, this is useful because you don't want to scare your students, especially in this class. When they come in and they see this daunting list of things that they're supposed to be doing, you can decide to open these things up at individual levels that's out there. We will be releasing in the next week or two what we call an auto releaser that will automatically release or open up these questions to the students at a specific date or time that you have in place. So before looking at the questions in this assignment, you'll recognize here's the assignment name. This is that publishing or that shown option. This tells you that this is organized in a specific manner, organize them in terms of modules. You can make them as homework. You can organize in a variety of different ways. This tells you when it's open. So this date and time, after that date and time, and before the due date and time, students can actually see the questions and upload it. Jamelia, just ignore the beta course issue. I'll talk about that momentarily. It's a little bit more complicated. But since the date and time right now is after the due date, this is now closed and not open available. And then I have the action items here. Has a properties clone and delete just like before, but it has this additional one, which is the grading. That's the open grader. that can pull up in order to be able to look at grading and grade things openly. But even if you have only auto-graded questions, it provides a mechanism in order to look question by question, submission by submission. If the question is algorithmic, it changes the question for each student, so you can actually see each student's question, what they would have. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that mechanism. So I'm going to click on here. Okay, remember, course assignment questions. So this is the list of questions that are in the assignment that we looked at, where that assignment is 1.1. And it has 23 questions that are in place. Each question has a question ID number. So there's actually two numbers. The first one is the course, is the assignment ID number. And the second one is the question ID number. So you can use this question in a variety of different assignments, and the combination of assignment and course tells people exactly what question in what assignment is supposed to be used. This tells you about what type of technology is used. This right here is not really a question. I think this is just a preamble of text that's or instructions given to the or in this case a vocabulary. I could take a look at it. It's not worth any points. It has no solution created. And this one here again has this thing here that's editing the question source, which you may not have. If you don't own the question, you don't have access to editing it. But you have the ability to clone a question, which is what you're going to be doing in the breakout room, where we give you a set of questions that you can clone, which means copy the question, and now you have the ability to edit it without interacting with the initial question. Now, I'm going to slow down a little bit here because I know I threw a lot toward you. Anytime that you see this blue button here next to an ID number, if you click on it, it will copy that ID number. Now that's useful because that ID number can be used in a variety of different ways. The principal way is you can use it in order to add to one of your other assignments. It's not the only way, but it's the way that's actually most convenient for me. So let's take a look at these questions. I'm going to click on the first one. And again, the first one is not a question. It's a series of vocabulary for the students in order to be able to do. So you can think of it as an extended instructions list. The next question is really a question, and this is what they use. This right here is an H5P question. Again, one of the 4 auto-graded technologies that's available. You can submit this thing. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Actually, this looks like it's a little, let's do it here. There we go. So I didn't do that, even though I was very good for doing so. At the top here of the question is a little bit of an interface on how you use the questions. If you don't want to see this thing, you can click to view, and that just ignores it. And this just shows the basic question that's out there. And then you can go question by question just by here. You can click on here, or you can use the right or left arrow in order to go through your questions. At the bottom of the lower left-hand corner, your question is the attribution requirement. Because this is an OER project hosted with OER content, we need to have attributions for every single question. You can click on here and you can see the attribution connected to it. So this question here, titled here, was shared by this license by Christina Moon. You can even look at the source content that was added to it. In this case here, I think it's going to the studio, because this is an H5P question, so you can actually go to the technology in the studio versus it in Adapt. The studio doesn't have anything other than hosting the question and creating questions. Adapt is the one that uses those questions with a grade book and registration and things like that. So that is the basic overview of these things. If you were to click on basic, you can see a few additional features here, depending upon changing the number of points. Being able to edit the question properties, being able to clone and things like that. I don't want to discuss this right now because I want to go back to importing the question and answer a few of the questions that came up here. So I'm going to click on the logo and come back up on here. Now, several of you tried to import a question, import a course that gave you the option of alpha beta. and I just want to mention this quickly, and we'll go into more detail. The concept between alpha and beta is very similar to a concept that we use in the libraries called transclusion. And the idea behind here is alpha beta is the terminology that we're using to take the place of something that we don't want to use, which is master slave. So an alpha course is a primary course that you can build up. And then beta courses are courses that are connected to the alpha course so that when you update the alpha course, the beta courses can automatically be updated. Okay. So when you bring in a course, import a course, you have the choice to say, do you want a copy of the course as it is? In that case, there it is just not a beta course. Or do you want to make a copy of the course such that when someone updates the alpha course, you'll get notified to update the beta course, so it's actually synced up. That's useful if you have a course with many adjuncts coming in order to address it and you want to synchronize the material in the class. It doesn't force each beta course in order to be exactly like the alpha course. They have the ability in order to deviate from it, but the questions that come from the alpha course are then locked to the alpha course, have the ability to be locked to the alpha course. So I don't want to go into that in any more detail right now because it's a bit more advanced. The key aspect is this is important in order to capitalize on using Adapt as a community so that you don't reproduce the wheel, so we can actually be more effective in the way we do things. So I presume that most of you have created a course in Adapt. Does anyone have any problems in creating a course or importing an existing course in Adapt? No one is chiming in, so I expect that you all have created that. I'm going to delete this course. Sorry, Christina. It asks me to copy and paste the confirmation of the title of that course just to make sure that I know that I am in deleting this course. It's not easy to delete a course. And now it's going away. And it will take a moment to clear out the database and make it work. So what I want to be able to do now is to create a new course. So instead of import course, I'm going to go to new course. And it pops up this modal, this pop-up here, which has a series of questions. And most of these questions you would have expected to be asked on this thing. Nadine, can you submit your email to Josh Halpern? You can DM him and he can get you a new an access code. So so I'm going to create a new course. This is going to be an empty course. I'm going to just say this is a new course. I can have a public description. It doesn't have an asterisk, which means it's not required. So I love cats. Private description, I really don't love cats. I like dogs. This is private, although this right here is available for students. Sorry, this is private, this is public, so that when you actually import the course, students can actually see the public descriptions for your course. If you have a textbook URL that you want to share here, you can pop it down there. It has no functioning impact on the way Adapt works. It just provides additional metadata connected to the course. And then I have modality. Just keep it as traditional. Later on, we'll talk about formative and anonymous and what that meant. I already talked about before in terms of making a course formative. It means that anyone can see the questions in the course without having to sign in. That's connected to it. Antoinette was asking, does a textbook link show up to students? Yes, it does. Okay, so now it has section. I just want you to type in 1 and CRN, that's 1. Now this is the course registration number, and this is required because if you want to export an option, export scores that you want to import manually into your LMS, you need to have section and course registration numbers involved in that. Otherwise, just 1 and 1 is important here. If you teach a class that has multiple sections, for example, when I teach a 500 student class in general chemistry at my campus, I have 16 sections. Each section has a lab and a discussion at a different date, at a different time, and I need to be able to coordinate them differently, and that's how I add these things up. But most of the time, we teach classes, or at least especially community colleges, teach classes with a single section that's there. I can make a term out here. I recommend strongly that you write down the term that's important. This is the term that you're going to be using because this is important in order to be able to track. Then you have the start date, which I'll start today, and the end date, which I will go to next year. I can decide if I want this to be public. I'm going to keep this as private right now. I can decide if I want this to be an alpha class. That's basically saying, do I want other people to be able to tether to my course? That comes with certain responsibilities when you allow people to tether to the course. I recommend just keeping it no for now. And this right here tells me if my campus has already hooked up to Adapt, has already hooked up their learning management system to Adapt. And my campus has not done it because I haven't gone through the paperwork, although many of you guys have already processed that. And if you did, that will give you an option here to make your course either an LMS course, which means it's coupled to an LMS, to a course on your campus LMS, or not, which is what it is right now that is available. All right. So if I click this thing and I did everything right, it won't balk and give me a warning. If I do something wrong, it will stop, give me a warning, and show me the red around the area that is not right. So I will show you something that I know is right. I'm going to save, and it's going to say section field is required. I'm just going to do in 1. And now I've created a new course. So I'd like everyone to create a new course right now. Nadine, were you able to get the access code that you needed? Anyone who needs an access code, here are 6 access codes. If the first one doesn't work, that means someone has used it. Go to the next one and go to the next one in order to be able to process. This is only if you haven't already gotten it in a different way. So, okay. So everyone should be creating a new course. April asked, what school should I write if teaching at more than one school? Just pick one that that's applicable. So because each to hook up to a learning management system, we need to do it at a campus level. And your email address that your account has to be hooked up and approved by your Canvas LMS. So in other words, if you teach at multiple schools, right now you have to have multiple accounts for each learning management system in order to be able to pop it in. So in other words, if you sign into something like Imperial College, but you're then going to use Sierra College, like Romano does, you have to switch between the different, you have to have 2 different accounts in order to be able to process that. We're working on ways in order to be able to simplify that, but it requires a bit of finesse in terms of interacting with the learning management system for doing. If you're not using learning management system, it doesn't care. It doesn't matter. So, I presume that everyone has created a new empty course. Remember, course assignments questions. So let's go into that course. And here it is. And it consists of no assignments, which is not surprising. We have the ability to make new assignments and to import existing assignments from existing courses, which is very similar to what it is for importing an entire course. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be building a new assignment. But before we do so, I just want to talk about these other 2 things. So if you click on course gradebook, it's going to look like a gradebook, just like any learning management system. The thing is, there are no students enrolled in this class and there are no assignments enrolled in this class. So the gradebook basically doesn't exist. So if you click on this thing, it's going to look like nothing. But when you have something existing here, it's going to start looking like a big spreadsheet with data, with students on one side and assignments on the other side. I want to talk about course properties very briefly before we start talking about adding an assignment to it. So here's the course properties. When it comes up with the same modal that I used in order to create the course, and I can come in, I can modify it. For example, if I really do love cats, in order to make sure that my wife doesn't disown me, I will actually change this and I can save it and make it work. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with databases, databases are set up so that when you make a table up that holds information, as long as no one has inputted information into that table, you can structure it and restructure it however you want. However, once someone actually has submitted something to that table, you get locked in and you're unable to do some features. So just be aware of it, that some of these things, not the ones that are actually on the screen, but some of these things, when students start submitting, you're unable to change because the database has already been locked. For those of you who've been working with Canvas for a while, you're familiar with the locking of assignments. The same thing applies to any system. Most things have a locking of a database, whether or not you see it. So on the side here are a series of properties associated with the course. And I encourage you, in order to take a look through here, given time, I'm not going to be able to address it right now, but I'll talk about it several times later on. The one thing that I want to go at least start with is sections. Now, remember I mentioned this has one section, and this is the CRN section. I'll mention white domain in a moment, and that's a good point in order to bring up. This section has an access code. If I give this access code to a student, any student that has an account on Adapt can get enrolled into my course. That's it. That's what it is right now. That's in place. And if I want to, I can refresh it. And now it has a different code. So this is the access code that we currently give to students in order to enroll in the class. Now, if you go through LTI and you enter in through your learning management system into Adapt, right now they still need this access code in order to process. I'm pretty sure they do, and maybe Christina can correct me, because I don't use the LMS interface for my courses personally, but we are going to be modifying this a little bit in order to be more automatic with LMSs in the near future. So let's get back to something I missed here. Narita mentioned, which is this little option right here is called whitelist domains. And this is interesting with the enrollment button. Anyone who has any student that has a student account can enroll in this course if they have the enrollment code, subject to the proviso that their email address is whitelisted here. Now, what we encountered before when we had this access code and that we distributed freely is that a student would come in and they would enroll with their campus ID. And then they forgot they did that, and they would enroll with their Gmail account. And they forgot that then they enroll with their Yahoo account. And we had a student that enrolled 6 different accounts into their course. It plays havoc with the gradebook. It makes everything a mess. So this whitelist is ordered to say we only whitelist for specific domains. Right here, it's ucdavis.edu. For me, I can pop in any whitelist here in order to be able to access that. That's there. So, yes, Antoinette, that's the after the @ sign that's in there, so you can pop them in. We will be modifying this a bit when we start bringing in rosters from learning management systems. That will automatically ignore the whitelisting domain because it's already going to be rostered off of there, and a few other features to avoid that. But this was meant in order to avoid hassle with students that would enroll with multiple courses, multiple accounts, and then have confusion about which account they use to solve which problem, and then they come in and they have issues off of this. Issues there. So there are a few other ones on here. I don't want to get into the details behind them. I could talk about them after lunch. I just want to get into make sure that we are able to add assignments and add questions to assignments so we can actually have a good lunch. So I'm going to go back to my course. Now this is the breadcrumbs. I can click on new course here. And here is the assignments we're going to. So I want to create a new assignment. that I'm going to be building questions or adding questions into. So I'm going to click on new assignment. It pops up with a modal just like it was with the course, but has series of other questions. So since everyone has created a course, I want everyone to start creating an assignment, a new assignment here. So in this case here, I'm going to call this new assignment. Public description, private description, I'm not going to respond to that. Modality, this is if I want this question to be summative or formative, just make it summative. I already mentioned the difference between the two. We'll get to that in a moment. You are not going to have assignment templates because you haven't created templates before, but a template is essentially addressing all these questions and such all previously that I just click and it automatically saves and runs that template. That makes it easier. So if I'm making, for example, 25 assignments, like what Christina Moon did in her class, I don't have to go through this 25 times. I can just make a single template that I store in my template area under dashboard, and I can just pull it back up. Skip over that. I'm going to decide that I want this assignment to be homework. I can create new groups. Christina used module 1, module 2, module 3. I have homework, I have labs, I have exams. I use Adapt as a learning management system, but not everyone does. So I'm just going to call this homework. I'm going to make this thing internal. External means I'm submitting scores from outside of Adapt. For example, if I had scores that were connected to attendance or something else that I can then load into it. That's because I use Adapt as an LMS, not just as a question homework system or as an external vendor, external tool in an LMS. Points for a question, I can decide if I want the questions to be awarded points manually. So I decide how many points per question that's there, or I can decide how many points there is for the whole assignment and that it distributes those points evenly for all the questions that's on there. So that's useful if I have 3 assignments and I want each assignment to be worth 100 points. If the first assignment has 10 questions, it's 10 points per question. The second assignment has 11 questions, then it's 9.1 points per question. If the third assignment has 9 questions, then it's 11.1, whatever, 11 point-ish points per question. And that makes it convenient in order to make sure that every single assignment has the same number of points so that students don't get confused, but you have the ability in order to break that. So I'm just going to assign a specific points per question and leave it at that. This right here asks for what the default number of points is, which is 10 points. I can modify that after it's generated. It doesn't really matter right now. Now comes the harder part, the assignment type. The assignment can be designated as one of 4 types. It can either be real-time, delayed, learning trees, or clickers. Now, the technology around learning trees and clickers are fundamentally different than the homework that we would normally give to students. That's because the learning trees involves a structure where students interact with the tree and move down a different tree. So it's different. Clickers work differently because if you have used a clicker system in your classroom, you're familiar with being able to turn on a question and turn off a question, and then get the feedback from the responses of the question, and the students are able to see that. That's fundamentally different than just giving students homework in order to solve at a specific date or time. So the DS assignments are for any work made in Adapt. I'm not sure. So if you make external here, you can just upload scores that would be stored in Adapt. So like exams, I use that in order to load into Adapt directly. So this is all an assignment. That's just a specific type of assignment. So real-time graded assessments are assignments that students can get instantaneous feedback on their submission. So that's really great for formative use, for learning. It can be great or useful for summative use, depending upon how much you want students in order to get the answers and the solutions back from that. Real-time assessments should not have auto-graded questions because it makes no sense. So you can't have a question in a real-time assignment because if a student were to submit text and you want instantaneous feedback, you would need to be at your computer ready to grade that question instantly. And unless you want to spend your whole existence next to your computer in anticipation for a student submitting open-ended grading, only auto-grade questions are in real-time assignments, or should be used in real-time assignments. And if you were to break that, you'll have a warning on your assignment telling you it's not a good idea. Delayed grading means students submit the answer and they get no feedback on their score. They get no opportunity to look at the solution until in a specific date or time, and then you can release those scores that are out there. So most assignments are real-time or delayed, and learning trees and Clicker are then a more advanced application of things. I'm just going to make this delayed in order to make things convenient. If you click real-time, you have a different set of questions that are connected to here. Actually, if you do real time, you have the ability to say how many allowed attempts that you want the student to be able to do. So 1 to 4 plus unlimited. So the student can continually submit here. You can decide if you want the student to be penalized each time that they've submitted. For example, if you want it to be 5% per a loss per time that they submit, under the anticipation that they don't just continually submit score after score after score, and then hopefully get a response that actually happens to be good. If you have hints for your question, you have the ability to decide if you want students to see the hints. And if you decide you want them to see hints, you can decide if you want them to have a penalty for seeing the hints. That may be your pedagogy. It's not a common pedagogy, but it's available. So I will just do the hint penalty at 0. Because this is real time, I can make it so that students can actually get the solutions automatically after they have given up. After they have said, I'm done with submitting, I then want the solution. And that's set up automatically right here. I can decide if I want it to be manual and not share the solution to the question, but just give the students their score of the question. It's my prerogative. If I do delayed, the questions are a little bit simpler. I just basically have the option for doing open-ended questions. I can decide if I want them to be submitted at the individual level or not. Doesn't matter off of here. The details are not so important for what we're dealing with here. I want to ignore this. I want to go back to algorithmic. So one of the power that we have in ADAPT, and specifically web work at iMath AS, is the ability in order to make it so every question can be have randomized set of numbers. So each student, if they have that sort of question, will have a different question, a different number. So that makes it easier in order to reduce cheating from being able to just look at a question, because one student's question will be different from the next student's question. It also helps to reduce the impact of Chegg and Corsair and other parasitic organizations that come in and provide the answer to your questions. Because many of our questions are OER, which means that they're distributed in a variety of different repositories out there. And you want to be able to limit that impact as much as possible. If you collect yes, then that means that every student will be different if the question was designed in order to do so. So the questions have to be designed in that way. And it's not a super trivial task in order to make a question algorithmic, because the question no longer is testing for a specific number that you might be saying the number is 5 plus or minus 10%. It is then this variable times this variable divided by this variable equals this variable. So it's a lot more complicated of a coding system. Okay, late policy. I can decide if I want to not accept late. If I accept late, but I just marks it late on the on my grade book, or I accept late with a deduction, and I can decide I want to say 5%. 5% per either once after deduction or every 24 hours or 12 hours or whatever time frame that I want to do. So it steadily goes down. We will have a floor on here in the next few months. So you can actually set a minimum number of points that's possible, so that there's always an incentive for students to come back in order to do an assignment that they may have just flaked out on. This right here is not important. You can detach an assignment from your grading, but this is useful only in individuals that use ADAPT instead of an LMS. There are instructions. We're just about done here. Then we have random sampling. So random sampling is different from algorithmic. Algorithmic takes the same core question and varies numbers. Random sampling gets a series of questions, and then it samples a certain number of questions from that pool and then gives that to the students. So you can have fundamentally different questions that are out there. I use this, for example, in my pre-labs for my chemistry classes where I want to show that the student has read the pre-lab. So they're all simple questions from the lab report, but that shows that they have read the lab report. And it's variable because I don't want the students, in order to just look on their other people's answers and be able to address that. Notifications, that right there means that if I click yes, that Adapt will send an email to the students saying this assignment's due at this specific date or this time. It could be 12 hours beforehand, 24, 36. Actually, the students are the ones that decide on when they want to get a notification. Then I can decide who I want this to be assigned to. I can say everybody. If I have multiple sections, I can select the different sessions. If I have students that have enrolled, I'll have a list of students on here so I can actually target this to specific students and time. And I can have assigned tos, which is similar to how how Canvas does that. So you can say this starts at this date and this time, it ends at this date and this time. And because I had a late policy, I have a final date in which I won't accept anything at all. That could be when I submit the grades. That could be a week before the submission of the grades. That could be one day after after it's initially due. It doesn't really matter. And if I did everything right, and ignore this auto release, you guys don't have that option, but you will soon. If I click save, it will tell me if I have a problem. The late deduction must be an integer. And now I've created an assignment. So right now I want you guys to be able to create an assignment. And then we'll quickly talk about how to add a question onto it. And then we'll take a break. We'll take our lunch break. I know we're about 10 minutes overdue. So while we're doing that, I think I have a question from Martin. What if you have a series of questions using a graphic? Will the algorithmic option be? Martin, no, but if you build the question in WebWork or iMath AS, you can actually make the graphic dynamic if you're plotting plots up and things like that. So Narika asked about creating a question. Let's stall on building a question until after lunch. I want to keep this thing targeted in terms of building a course, building an assignment, and adding existing questions to your assignment. So everyone should be going through and building an assignment. Got one person that says they build assignment. If you've created an assignment, please give me the thumbs up. I know I'm rushing a little bit here, but I want to make sure that I get all three of these things down before we break for lunch. Okay, I think the majority of people, Lori, okay, let's, I think you need some personal interaction. So if you hold on a moment, and we'll just get into building questions and then I'll get back into to address you. So unless Josh, you want to take, actually, just hold off on here. So here's the assignment. It's a new assignment. It has all the information you expect here. This is open because this started today at 9 a.m. and it's after 9 a.m., but it's before its close date. Anytime I see a little question mark up here, it'll pop up with a modal that gives some instructions off of this. And many times when you hover over these things, it'll pop up with what's called a tooltip, which is that little button right there. So I'm going to click on new assignment, and there are a bunch of properties off of here. We don't need to go into it. The only thing I want to be able to do here is to be able to add an existing question into this assignment, and then we break for lunch. So you have a button up here that says add questions and new questions. I want to just deal with add questions here. So if I click on add questions, I have two options, either going through the question bank or direct import by ID. If I do correct import by ID, if I paste that ID number that I showed before, which I don't know, okay, here are a bunch of access code ID numbers. If I paste that ID number in here right there, it will add it automatically. The question bank does a search through the question bank in order to be able to add things manually, but to be honest, I prefer by adding by ID. So this is where the issue is. I need to find a question that I want to add by ID. So at this point, I don't want you to do any significant cleanup. I'm going to open up a new tab for search. It's the same tab as right here, but I just want to have it separate just for convenience sake. And I'm going to do a search questions. Where are we? I'm going to do a search here. Actually, here we go. So it's the same interface. And I can search by different criteria. You can take a look at that. I'm just going to do a search by calculus. And upload this. So this is searching through the corpus, looking for the title, the word calculus in the title. This should be case insensitive, which it is because it's not changing. And it gives me the output off of here. If I put calculus in the meta tags that people have done, it's going to be a bigger number because there are many topics off of here and they're going to be more. Tom, we'll talk about writing questions after lunch. But anytime, yeah, we'll just talk about it after lunch. So here's the ID number for that question. 117 has this title. This is the author. It's a web work question. This tells me what type it is. So some question types that are structured like H5P and QTI, we have really detailed structure, detailed classifications, but many of these things that are more flexible question types of very variable things, we don't necessarily have a question type connected to it, or we haven't done so. Anytime here, I can click on here and it'll pop up the question, and here's the question that's on here. So this is web work question, and just basically enter in a value for these things. Gives me some tags off of here. And what I care about is only this number 117. So I'm going to copy that, which I just clicked on that button right there. And I'm just going to go into direct ID, import by ID. And I'm just going to paste it here. And now I pasted it. So if I go back to the assignment that I was at, I see it's right there. And that's it. So I can add the question, direct import by ID, and I could find something else like 168.5. And I could paste this in, and that came in. I can even do 1, or I can do some of the other numbers. If I go back to what my assignment is, I have 2 questions dealing with calculus based off of web work, and 1 that is based off of Spanish. And this is Christina Moon's initial course, initial set of questions that she had. So right now, I would like you guys to just add 1 question to your assignment, and then that's it. And then we break for lunch, and then we come back. We'll probably come back a little bit later than the top of the hour. So please do that. Add at least 1 question. I don't care what question it is. I don't care if you like the question. If you don't like the question, just as long as you've added 1 question into the assignment. Please put a thumbs up after you've added a question to your assignment, so I know that you are rocking. An open-ended question is a question that requires a human to grade. They can submit either text, a file, or audio in order to be able to do it, but it requires a human to grade, not a computer to grade. Okay, so I think I saw a decent number of thumbs sticking up here. I'm going to end it right now. Take an hour break. So let's come back in 1 hour at 1:15 for our time, Pacific time. So I guess that's 4:15 Eastern time.